Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 602 of the Juicebox Podcast. I don't normally like to date the episodes, but I am recording this for you on December 27th, 2001. By recording this, I mean the ads. I think the actual recording was made some months ago. But I'm telling you because today's guest is Beth. Beth is a newly diagnosed type 1, who is also the mother of a child with type 1 diabetes. I know that Beth is the mother of a child with type 1 because on July 7th, 2015, she and her then husband were guests on the 23rd episode of my podcast. While that sinks in, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Touched by Type 1. Please visit them at touchedbytype1.org or find them on Facebook and Instagram. Touched by Type 1's mission is to elevate awareness of type 1 diabetes, raise funds to find a cure, and inspire those with diabetes to thrive. You should check out what they're doing at touchedbytype1.org.
I'm Beth, and I have a son who was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes 6.5 years ago when he was 2 years old, 4 weeks before his sister was born. And I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes 6 months ago when I was 38.
Whose high alarm was that, yours or his?
That was mine.
Are you nervous?
A little bit.
You shouldn't be though, right?
Not right. I shouldn't be because I've done this once before, but yeah, I don't know.
Well, don't worry about that. Take care of your blood sugar if you need to. There's so much to ask here. Where do I start? You're like one of Daddy's friends before the divorce kind of thing. You were on the podcast in the very, very beginning. Am I wrong?
Yeah, that is very accurate. I think I don't know. It's in the 30s, I think. I want to say, but I can't really remember.
I think so too. It was far enough back that the naming system I had for it was different, and so it's not even easy for me to figure it out.
We were Jack's mom and dad. I do remember that.
Okay, hold on a second. Oh wait, no, hold on a second. Yours was 31. This is super interesting. Episode 31 was called Pie Attack. Because of your married name.
Nope, that's not me.
Wait a minute. Hold on a second. That's not you?
That's not me.
All right, hold on. Let me Google some more. All right, hold on a second. I'll find it. I'm so bad at searching my own blog. That's crazy. I should be better at this. I just did your first name and I was like, oh, it popped right up. I was like, this is definitely it. All right, what do you think the title was?
I think it was Jack's mom and dad.
All right, hold on.
Or Jack's dad and mom. Because both me and my ex-husband were on at the same time. We were still married at the time.
I have it. 23. Oh my God, this is
Oh my
you.
Gosh.
I remember you. Oh my, wow.
I'm hoping that's a good thing.
Of course it is July 2015. And it's June 2021 right now.
It's been a wild 6 years.
I was going to say that's 6 years ago. You totally took away my joy of knowing how many years it's been since 2015.
I'm so sorry.
Don't apologize. But even crazier, there are two people named Beth that were on the show in the beginning who I don't think are married anymore.
Oh.
Do you think the show is bad luck for women named Beth?
Or good luck?
Oh, never mind. Good riddance.
Well, I mean,
I'm
I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus who can't stand up here and defend themselves, but, I'm in a better place.
Good for you.
I feel.
All right. Well, so all right, hold on a second. This has completely fried my mind. But I'm together now because in my heart, you were the other Beth. Let me just say this before we move forward to the other Beth. I'm glad you don't have diabetes. But in my mind for the last 6 months you have. So I don't know if she still listens or not, but that is absolutely crazy. Okay. All right. So a lot has happened since then. So when you came on 6 years ago, you had 2 fairly small children. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Cause, Jack was 2 at the time, or 2.5 by that point.
Mm-hmm.
And, Evie was not even 4 months, I think.
Okay. I have a picture of her. She's super tiny in the photograph. So
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was her newborn picture. And
Okay.
so yeah, she was teeny tiny.
So back then Jack was, tell me again, how old?
He was 2.5.
And
He
how long he had diabetes at that point?
6 months. Even 6. Yeah, it was like, it might have even been 5.
Was I any good at the podcast back then?
Oh yeah.
Was I really? Oh, thank you. That's nice. I was certain you would say no.
No, I absolutely loved listening. And had it not been for the divorce happening a year later, I would have continued to listen, but it just kind of got to be too much. But
Okay.
I have caught up on 4 years of podcasts in 4 months. So
well, thank you. I just announced today on the Facebook machine that the podcast is currently averaging 3.5 downloads per minute.
that is awesome.
I want 6, Beth. I just saw.
Yeah.
I
mean, you are the constant overachiever. So
it's funny. I don't think I overachieve in anything but this. I think of myself more as competitive with myself. So
there you go.
every time I see the number, I'm like, but couldn't it be more? And
right.
And then I get like, I think of ways to reach more people, but it's at least it's a nice thing. The competitiveness gets used in a good way, which is
absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I like, especially these last like since I've started re-listening again, I'm like, oh, this is like getting therapy on an extra day.
Oh, thank you. I should charge for that. $40 a month, Patreon. No,
there you go.
I'm definitely not doing that. That sounds horrible to me. Although there is somebody who came to me the other day, there are business people who see that you have a popular thing and they'll come to you and say, here's how you can monetize your ideas. And I'm like, thank you. No, thank you. Like I have to say no, thank you to a lot of people.
Right.
But one of them said, imagine if you would charge 50 cents for a download or $5 a month and for each person listening. And I said, I can't imagine that, because if I stop and think about that, that will make me want to do that. Because I would like to retire too someday. So, so I'm like, please don't tell me about that. I'm like, I very badly want this show to remain free to the people who are listening to it. So no, thank you. And please, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. But
no, I'm just, I think I would speak for probably most of the people listening or all of them when I just say we can't thank you enough.
No,
I mean, it's just it's not just a management podcast. It's a humanitarian.
Oh, wait a minute!
Podcast.
I'm almost like Nelson Mandela for diabetes. You're saying?
Yeah, sort of. I mean,
you're like, no, I'm not saying
not with
that
the apartheid bit. I mean, that might be going a tad bit too far.
You think Nelson Mandela's a little too much of a shining star in this scenario? All right, hold on a second.
Maybe a hair's breadth too far.
All right,
but it's a welcome reminder that we're not alone, and that we all have struggles, and that we all have struggles outside of diabetes. Yeah. Right? It's just like it adds to it.
I'm glad.
Right. It's the one more thing that nobody really wants one more thing to be.
Well, I'm super happy that it provides that for you. I'm going to ask you one difficult question so that we can leap forward and ask the rest of them. Was the dissolving of your marriage to do in any way with diabetes?
I had a feeling that would come up. I can't say that it was specifically to that. There were a number of other, probably more heavily contributing factors. But from my standpoint, there were, I can't say that it wasn't, but not directly.
Wow. You just talked all the way around that, Beth. Okay. So I'm not asking your personal, I don't want to, like, you understand, I'm not asking for your personal details, like
right.
about your divorce. I just want to know, did diabetes add, is that what you're saying, that it added stress on top of an already stressed issue?
Yes.
Okay. That's fair. I would think that it's added stress to all of us. And that there's like 4 people listening right now. They're like, my life is perfect, so diabetes wasn't that much worse. And everyone else feels that exact way. So I just didn't want to gloss over it, because if I was listening as a listener, I'd wonder the whole time. And I didn't want people to be wondering when I started asking you really other questions that I'm super interested in. So first of all, how is Jack doing?
Jack's doing good. We've, we did struggle for a while, and his A1C did get up into the 9s, unfortunately. There's all kinds of ways that I could talk around that, but life is distracting, and we were able to refocus, and he's now back down to 7.1. So hopefully we'll get him under the 7s in the next within the year. Did
it become, I don't want to attach it to something meaningless, but again, all of my examples that pop in my head are always stupid, but give me a second. So what I was thinking was, is it like when you want to do the laundry and mop the kitchen floor today, but the laundry ends up being slightly more important, so you don't mop the floor for 6 months?
Kind of.
Okay.
It's also one of those, I acted as a single mom for, a number of years, and I worked full time.
Yeah.
Right.
And little baby too.
Around single mom, Evie wasn't even 2. It just kind of got lost in the mix, and, I probably slept through more high alarms overnight than I had prior to. Gotcha.
And that's just the function of, you need to get up and go to work in the next day, or your guys are going to have bigger problems. Is that how it feels?
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's that.
Any sadness on your part after everything?
In regards to what? I'm sorry.
I don't know. Did you go through a period of like feeling down after the divorce, or was it invigorating? I only have my mother's divorce to draw from. My mom acted like she was okay, but seemed pretty sad, got thrust into a full-time job that she didn't have prior to that, and then seemingly ignored everything around the house because that was pretty much all she could handle.
Right. So I think for me, it was just kind of, I threw myself into survival mode almost.
Mm-hmm.
And so there wasn't, I think, any grieving that I did prior to the divorce.
Okay.
Because I had hit a point to where I had done what I felt I could do, and I was just done. And so that grieving process, for the most part, happened up to the point where the papers were signed. And then it was kind of take a breath and move forward.
It was kind of processed for you by then.
Yeah.
Got it. Kids stayed. Did you have to change homes, or did you get to stay where you were?
We did. So we sold the home that we were in, and then I moved to a townhome for about a year. And then my current husband and I, we weren't married at the time, but we went ahead and bought a house together.
Oh, good shit.
Yeah. And so, yeah.
So I'm sorry. I know this is all incredibly difficult, but you must have known that when you reached out, right? So,
yeah, no, I mean, I'm prepared. Like I don't, you can try to make me cry.
Do you think I'm trying to make people cry? Most of the time, I'm trying not to cry myself.
Although I'm sure it would do wonders for ratings. So there's that.
I listen. We're not going to make you cry just so more people will listen. But if that's going to work, then we'll pick a time in every episode and people will cry together. It'll be nice.
There you go.
So, okay. So during this kind of transitional period, would you say you lost focus on Jack's diabetes, or how do you describe what happened as you drifted away from where you were to where you ended up? And then what made you like kind of go, oh, I got to move this in the other direction?
Yeah. So part of it was certain aspects had kind of been moved out of my realm of overseeing. Right. Like you probably should not text your ex-husband at 2 p.m. and say, hey, more insulin. That's not going to be taken well.
Does he respond back, you left me?
I never tried it, so I don't know.
Oh, I see. You weren't certain where it was going to go. So Jack, people who did not grow up in a divorced like household are probably not going to see as much humor in this as I do. But so Jack spent time with his dad, and he spent time with you. There was one set of management with you and one set of management with his father. Is that fair?
Correct.
And
yes.
You didn't feel.
And then on top of that, he also started daycare about a month after we moved. And that took some adjusting on their part as well. Now they were super cooperative and very vigilant. But a lot of daycares use a lot of processed food. And then they also have snacks of things like, Pop-Tarts or let's make fruit kebabs, or, how many carbs can we shove into your kid at 3:00 and then you're going to try and feed them dinner at 5:30.
We like to make them sleepy for the end of the day so they don't fight putting their coats back on.
Right.
Yeah. What we do is we pack them full of carbs and then they just kind of slow down a little bit. They're less ornery. It's crazy knowing what daycare costs that wouldn't at least come with like something that wasn't a Pop-Tart. It's terrible. And you're stuck, right? Like, I think that's important for people to remember is that you're not the queen of like Wales or something. I'm sure the Wales doesn't have a queen, but they must have a princess or something like that. And like, you're not like sitting on a pile of gold trying to decide what to do next with your fancy life. You're out busting your ass. You got a job. You're trying to like keep all this stuff up in the air, trying to have like a life for yourself. Like there's a lot going on in that tiny little space and time. And so as it drifts up, as his A1C goes up and up, are you thinking like, how does it happen so incrementally that you don't feel it? Is it like gaining 10 pounds?
Oh, no. Well, I mean, for me, gaining 10 pounds, I feel gaining 10 pounds. But there's a lot of, self-flatulation that goes along with it of like, oh, I'm not doing a good job. Oh, I'm still not doing a good job. Oh, I'm doing an even worse job. And that, I mean, it doesn't really help anything, right? Because it's still not solving the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And probably within the last 2 years is when we've really started to see his A1C come back down. So there was probably a 2.5 year time period where it went up, and I just said, that's enough. Like, we can't keep doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And,
what's the fix then? How do you jumpstart it?
One meal at a time. I mean, really it was just, let me see if I can get one meal down. Let me just see if I can get a dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, well, he's going to bed at a stable rate. Okay, let's see if we can get him to stay stable overnight.
Would you?
And
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine. It's just the once we got him in range, right, it's easier to keep him in range.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem was, and it continues to be, right, if something goes a little hinky, and his blood sugar shoots up, trying to get it back down and get it back down safely. Because when he was diagnosed at 2, a half a unit is an insane amount of insulin at that age.
Right.
And then, fast forward a couple of years, and half a unit is, it's not nothing, but it doesn't do the same thing.
All right. I have to say something, and then I'm going to ask a question. And please, I am not making fun of you. It's just so worth pointing out. A couple of minutes ago, you meant self-flagellation, which, means to inflict pain on yourself. And you said self-flatulation, which I think is something about farting. So it's very possible that you may have inadvertently named your episode Self-Flatulence.
Damn, because I actually had a good one in the back of my head.
You're going to have to come up with something way better as we move forward to knock that out of my head. Now, speaking of getting something knocked out of your head, it's occurring to me as I'm putting this timeline together that you have a very young son diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. In that first year, we all know that time to be chaotic. And then you get divorced, which I'm assuming puts kind of a pause on your ability to dig into the type 1. So is it almost like when your head comes up above water, is it almost like he was just diagnosed? Or am I wrong about that? I mean, you still dealt with it day to day, but I mean, if we're being fair, in 8 and 9s, there was some stuff being missed in there. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think it was going through some of the education again. Mm-hmm. Right. It was, kind of reintroduction of like looking at what I considered to be high, readjusting my expectations.
Okay.
Because, when you're, I guess I kind of only had so much bandwidth. And so then I was hitting that like, oh, it's just 180. It's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just 200. Well, it's still under 200. It's okay. Right. And then those creep away from you.
Yeah. You just keep raising the ceiling.
And then it was just kind of hitting this point of, that's it. His A1C is not going any higher than this. And we're going to go about this the way that I was going about it at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And hopefully we see some more success.
And how were you able to impact the split household situation, or has that changed since then?
It hasn't. But my husband is really great. He actually helps me manage mine as well.
I can't wait to get to that part.
Yeah.
The only podcast in the world where people are super excited that you got diabetes, but go ahead.
Right. Yeah. So he helps out because he's a stay-at-home stepdad. So he helps out with school time. He helps out with after school. He kind of takes care of the overnights for the most part.
Yeah.
And so he was able to, because Jack was still, the last time that he was actually in a school was first grade. But he was able to call up to the nurse and say, hey, go ahead and up his basal and give him a bolus of, 0.75.
Mm. Beth, how many men are you supporting at this point?
The four of us, just the four of us.
I'm just, I spent a lot of time being a stay-at-home dad feeling like, I don't make any money. I felt very badly about it, but I'm just teasing. I don't think that at all. I think that the stay-at-home parents do an amazing thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Definitely teasing. Yeah. Okay. So you're getting help from another person. Now, how long have you been remarried?
Since February.
Oh, congratulations.
So coming up on 4 months here.
Oh, wow. It's very new. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hey, should we book 6 months from now and you can tell me about your third husband or 6 years from now?
Yeah, let's try 6 years. I want to give this one at least 6
Give
months.
this guy a good roll first. No, that's really wonderful. Congratulations. How did you guys meet? I'm interested in how you meet during a pandemic and get married.
Well, we actually were sort of college sweethearts. We did it in college for a few months. Kind of sort of kept in touch with each other off and on. And as I was going through the divorce, we reconnected.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've actually been together since later on in 2016.
I see. Oh yeah. You didn't meet on like Grindr or Twinder. I don't know any of the apps. So I'm not sure which ones are appropriate for you, but I think there's one now called Hinge, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, that should be interesting.
Yeah. I should never get divorced, as I will not be able to find another human being through an app. That would be a horrifying thing. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Is it hard as an adult with 2 kids to say to somebody like, "Hey, look at me, I'm a package"? Like, is that scary or not with the right person? It isn't.
I don't think with the right person. With Jordan, it was, all cards are out on the table from the get-go. And I was like, look, dude, I got a kid with a chronic illness. That's not going away.
Mm-hmm.
So, you want to continue this, you just need to know what you're signing up for.
Yeah.
And, I sent him, things like a pancreas and sugar surfing in the mail, because he actually was living 2 hours away from here as well.
Beth, is anything in your life easy?
No, because, when you also stop and think about it, my diagnosis was in the height of the pandemic.
Yeah. I just want to know, I was getting ready to jump into that. I'm glad you felt the vibe. What I want to know is, did you get married and then you got type 1, or did you get type 1 right before you got married?
So I got type 1, and when I was in the ICU and they were asking for next of kin, I tried to put him down, and they were like, "What's your relationship? He's my life partner." Yeah, no, that doesn't work. What's your mother's name?
We dated in high school, college.
It's like, okay. And, I let him know that. And we had kind of been talking about getting married, but then that was kind of the impetus of like, all right, let's go down to the courthouse.
Oh, so wait, so this isn't a good guy. He thought he was going to get your stuff. I know. I guess that's not it. Right. You wouldn't trade taking care of a kid with diabetes for like a DVD player and 20 movies, probably. I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Nah.
So, okay. So how did you, all right, I guess, how did you figure out you had type 1? What happened?
Well, and we actually think that I may have had LADA that I ignored for years. But it kind of started with a yeast infection.
As every good story does.
Right? And I am not prone to yeast infections. I think I've had 2 my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And this one came on and was not going away. I mean, I think I struggled with this for 4 months.
Wow.
And I was seeing doctors. I was getting, I was getting antifungal oral medicine. I was getting topical medicine. I was getting internal creams. And it just would not go away. And the lab results were not coming back positive for yeast. So we kept thinking, oh, shit, I've got cancer. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And then they reran the yeast culture and it came back positive. And my immediate thought was, oh, shoot, sugar feeds yeast.
Mm. Did you say it out loud? You're like, hey, I have diabetes. Like, did you tell somebody or did they figure it out on their own?
Well, I figured it out. I called Jordan into my office because I've been working from home, and I said, I think this might be diabetes. And he just looked at me and said, okay, well, now what? I said, well, let me test my blood sugar after lunch. So I had a salad and the world's tiniest cookie. And an hour later, checked my blood sugar. It was over 300. No. Okay, right?
Yeah.
Check it again. No, it's still over 300.
Try a different finger. Maybe all the sugar's in this one finger.
Right? So I call my mom and I'm like, hey, my blood sugar is over 300. I think I have diabetes. And she's like, no, that could be any number of things. I'm in a meeting. I got to go. Bye. Okay. So then I call my doctor. I'm like, hey, so I checked my blood sugar. I had a salad and a small cookie. He's like, you can't check your blood sugar after you've had a cookie. I'm like,
cookies don't make your blood sugar 300 if your pancreas works. I hope everyone understands that, even though your doctors and your mother don't seem to.
Right. So he said, well, send me a fasting blood sugar in the morning. And this is an empirical question, and I'm a very logical person normally. And so I'm like, okay, there's like some facts around this, and he wants a measure that he knows is controlled. So okay. So I struggle through the rest of the day, send him a blood sugar in the morning, and it's 257, I want to say. Yeah. Somewhere around there. And he's like, okay, well, I'm going to send in a prescription for metformin for you, and we'll have a consultation tomorrow.
Even though your kid has type 1?
That was what, and I said, so you don't think this is type 1? He said, no, type 1 normally presents with a higher blood sugar.
Not if you catch it sooner.
Right. Well, and the other thing too, which retrospectively, I think had I not already been in DKA, I would have thought through this a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But I had checked my ketones as well, and they were 5.6 on a blood meter.
My God, this guy's sending you metformin? Where do they just hand these licenses out now at this point? Are there too many colleges making doctors? What's happening? I'm an idiot, Beth. Let's be clear about that. And I could have diagnosed you off the things you just said. I mean, my goodness, that's terrible.
And here's the funny thing. So that was a Tuesday. And so I had an appointment with my therapist, who happened to have been, who did a research project on exercise and diabetes at the Joslin Institute when she was younger. And so I kind of, she had been aware that we were concerned about cancer. And I said, well, I'm 99.9% sure that I don't have cancer. And she was like, well, that's good. And I said, but I'm 99.9% sure that I have diabetes. And I think if she could have crawled through the computer screen, she probably would have. Because, she was totally floored. And then I told her what was going on. And she said, you don't have type 2. She said, if this is type 2, I'll eat my hat.
Yeah. Obviously. How long did it take your poor vagina to bounce back after all this?
By that time, I had been through, I think, 8 rounds of an oral antifungal and 3 rounds of creams. And by that time, it finally had healed up, thankfully.
Yeah. I don't have one, but that seemed horrible. So
it was pretty awful. It was, not to get too totally TMI or graphic here, but
there was
skin on my legs that was starting to not be skin anymore.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's not like if you break your wrist, you can just put it in a cast and let it heal. You still got to use that thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
At least for the basic stuff, and hopefully the other stuff.
Right.
So, boy, you're quite a catch. I can see how you guys ended up married. This is something.
Right? I just come with all the bells and whistles.
You're like, listen, here's what I have to offer. I got 2 kids. One of them has type 1 diabetes. I think I have diabetes. My hooch is pretty busted up, and I'm in a townhouse. So come on over, sign the papers. Well, he must really love you.
He's a pretty stand-up guy. I gotta say
that's excellent. All right, so do you even end up in the hospital over this, or do you even make it to metformin guy?
I do. So I don't make it to metformin guy because this is Tuesday. This is 10 days before Christmas too, because we don't do things simple here. And I'm trying to avoid going to the hospital because there's a pandemic going on.
Yeah.
And I just don't know how much insulin to give myself is really where I'm at.
Right.
Because at this point I have an 8-year-old, and I know what works on an 8-year-old isn't going to work on a 38-year-old. So I don't really know.
Did you just try? I feel like I would try.
I probably in retrospect should have, considering what I dealt with at the hospital. And oddly enough, my brother-in-law, through my husband, my husband's sister husband has type 1 diabetes.
Your brother-in-law. You said brother-in-law, which I understood, and then you described it a different way.
Right. Well, just to where it's, yeah.
You're like my brother-in-law, then you're like my husband's sister's husband.
Yeah.
Yeah, your
just
brother-in-law.
So that there's no blood relation. Like there's no.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, so he has type 1. And so my husband is messaging back and forth with his brother-in-law saying, hey, he's like, well, you could always try just giving her 5 units and see if it drops. And I'm just, and I'm thinking about what 5 units does to Jack. And I'm thinking, you're not getting near me with 5 units of insulin. I don't know what that's going to do. And I don't have a continuous glucose monitor. So there's no way.
Isn't that funny? That's interesting. I was wondering where you would fall, like how it would feel. That's the part of your story, I think, that's we haven't tapped into yet that I'm super excited to talk about, which is, did any of what you understood for your son translate to you?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Just scaled up.
Just not that day when you were like,
right.
Hey, what's going on here? Okay. So you end up in the hospital then?
So I do, because, I had hit a point to where we had realized that I was too far gone to mess with it at home.
I see.
Because at that point I had also dropped about 35 pounds in 3 months. And I had thought I had been being super healthy by drinking all this water, and that was what was making me pee so much, right? All the classic signs finally kind of clicked. And that was the point to where I just, and I think I had had a low carb dinner I'd had a low carb dinner that night and passed out on the couch. And Jordan just kind of looked at me and was like, you were going to go to the hospital one way or the other, even if I had to toss you in the car and then throw you out of it into the ER room.
Blow the horn. Come get this one.
Yeah. I'll take the other 2 home.
Diabetes and check her hooch.
Right. The important thing.
They just drove. Yeah, fix all the stuff I need and make sure she doesn't die. And they just drove away because of the COVID again. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
you go in through the ER? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and we had, we're in North Dallas. And so there's a number of hospitals to choose from. Right. And so we saw one that had an endo attached to it. And so we thought, okay, we'll go to this one because they have a specialty available that we'll probably need. So I go into the ER and I'm like, I have diabetes, but I don't know what type and I need a diagnosis. which is probably not the right thing to say, but it was really what my brain could get out at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like, yeah, okay. And the ER doc comes in and he was like, so what's going on? And I said, well, I tested my blood sugar at home. I have diabetes, but I don't know what type. My son has type 1. I'm pretty sure it's type 1. But if we could run the antibody tests, that would be great. And obviously everything else that you guys need to do. And he just kind of looks at me. He's going, okay, well, we're going to verify that. We're going to run your A1C. I'm like, okay, sure. And then, they draw blood and have you pee in a cup and all of this. And my A1C was 11. So they're like, yeah, you've got diabetes. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate you agreeing with me.
And there was glucose in my urine. And I think when they did a finger stick, it was 287.
Okay. Well, yeah, you had the low carb meal before that, right? Yeah.
And so, they start getting me hooked up to stuff, and I'm still asking for the antibody test. Oh, they'll pull that for you in the ICU. Okay. But you probably have type 2. Like, and I'm sitting there going, like, I know I need to lose a few pounds here, but you haven't taken my medical history.
Right. It's just what happens. It happens to everybody, right, Beth? Like doctors,
I know.
They're just like, they go, hey, you have weight to lose. You have type 2 diabetes. Hey, you don't have weight to lose. This can't be type 2 diabetes. People are just like, I mean, it must be. Here's what I'm saying. Medical school must be super easy. That's what I'm getting at. I mean, what I'm figuring is I'm a 6-hour course away from being able to take out your spleen. That's all.
That would not surprise me.
Yeah, I just need to learn online, apparently. Kids don't even have to go to college anymore. I'm just sitting in this chair away from being a surgeon, is what I'm thinking. I don't know how, with something as prevalent as diabetes, there couldn't be an extra 20 minutes worth of education about it for doctors. I mean, just like put them all on the same page. Like, how hard would it be to put everyone on the same page about type 1 and type 2 diabetes? Hey, don't judge people by their body shape. Here's how you figure it out. Like, I don't know. I don't understand why we can't fix little problems in the world. I'm sorry. I'm sorry it happened to you, but still.
I knew when I went in there, I was like, this is going to be, I didn't think it would be as much of a fight as it ended up being.
Yeah.
But I knew that I would have to try and convince somebody.
Right.
And so they sent me from the ER up to the ICU because, I was pretty far gone into DKA at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And my electrolytes were totally out of balance. So they're hooking me up to all kinds of bags. And I asked for the antibody test again. Oh, no, we're not going to do that here. That would happen in your regular room. But you've got type 2 diabetes. Okay. Why are you? Well, you're 38. Okay. You can get type 1 any age. And they're like, yeah, but this isn't type 1. You can get DKA in type 2. So I'm just, I'm like, all right, pick and choose my battles. I'm not going to get anywhere with these people. Fine. I'll wait until I get down to the regular room. Get moved down to the regular room. And the overnight doctor was the first one who actually said, hey, all of that sounds reasonable. You have a very close relative with type 1. You're not overly obese. I don't even know that I would be considered obese.
Beth, are you trying to knock out the other title with not overly obese?
Right. I mean, I'm overweight, but I'm not.
Me too, Beth.
I'm also not the picture of a couch potato either, right? Like I go hiking, I go walking. I am not an inactive person.
Mm-hmm.
And so she seemed totally fine, ordered the test. The morning doctor, the daytime doctor, removed the orders from my chart
Really?
Really.
Oh, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
And I hate
No
cursing because later I'll
kidding.
have to edit that out. But that's really crazy. So you got to the right. You did. By the way, I appreciate how you handled this. You ask everybody, then you assess who are the decision makers in the room. Recognize that this isn't going to go anywhere. Keep moving. Keep asking. Find the person who finally makes sense, and then the next chucklehead comes in and takes it off again.
Yeah.
So you're
Pretty much.
3 for 4 bad doctors so far. You've ER, ICU, overnight, morning, and you found one.
Yeah.
And the other ones knocked that one right out of the contention.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, then we move about the day, and they've switched me off, because they've moved me out of ICU. I'm no longer on insulin drips. I'm now on pens. So, I think the first meal that I ate was a dinner. And I said, okay, how many carbs? Because I'm thinking, I don't know how much you guys are shooting me up with, and you guys aren't checking my blood sugar as often as I'd like anyway. So I'm definitely not going to undereat this first go around. And they said 40 to 60. Well, okay, so I'm going to order 60 carbs because I don't trust a single person in here.
Except the guy, and he's gone now. Or the lady,
Right.
was she the overnight? Was the overnight doc a woman or a man? I'm sorry.
It was a woman.
Okay,
it was
her. Then
yeah.
She's gone now. Right.
Yeah, and so then my blood sugar went high overnight, and they're like, okay, how much did you order? I said, well, you told me it covered up to 60 carbs, so I ordered 60 carbs. Oh, let's try and knock that down to 40. Okay. So I had an omelet and a bagel for breakfast, and by lunch, my blood sugar went up to 400 something.
Yeah, hospital bagels are not even like
they're not
even grocery store bagels, which are not even bagels. And for those of you who don't live on the East Coast, you have no idea what a bagel is, and that's a judgment straight from me.
I really probably don't, especially considering like my exposure has been Texas bagels.
Yeah,
so
it's not even a thing. You don't even understand what you're doing, right? So it's great. It's like when my brother tells me he's getting pizza. You're not getting pizza. You're in Wisconsin. Stop it. So okay. So now they've successfully jacked your blood sugar back up again.
Right. And blaming me because I shouldn't be eating a bagel. Never mind that they're giving me insulin. So I don't think the bagel's the problem. I think it's the lack of insulin, but that's fine. And at this point is when the arguments with the daytime doctor really start. Because I was very insistent on getting this test, and she just refused to put it. And I hadn't realized that she had removed it from my chart or from my orders.
Yeah. How would you know?
And so I'm, relatively speaking, a fairly mild-mannered person. But it hit a point around 4:00 that afternoon during shift change where there were 2 nurses and both of the techs in my room as I was shouting that if only there was some way to figure out which type of diabetes I have. Oh, right. There's a fucking test. Why don't you order
it? You were yelling this?
Yes, with the door open. So I'm sure I was like very well looked upon by the rest of the hospital staff at that point, but I didn't care. I wanted my test. The only reason I walked into the ER was to get a diagnosis and to get my blood sugar down.
Right.
And they weren't really doing either one of those things. So
were they still charging you though? I imagine you were getting billed every day, $10,000 a day to be there.
Oh, thankfully I have pretty good insurance, but I did see what the original amount was, and I was like, there's no way your guys are getting that money out of me.
No one's paying that for your scattershot help. Well, what ends up being like, do you figure it out in the hospital? Like, does somebody save you, or how does this do you end up at an endo?
So pretty much what ended up happening was the overnight doctor came in, and I'd made so much noise. The nurse asked her about the test, and she said, well, I ordered that last night. Why wasn't it drawn? So they put the order back on and made sure to have the blood drawn before the daytime doctor came in. And she was super thrilled when she found out that I had done this, that I'd worked my way around her. And then I was out of the hospital, I think 2 days after that. And during this time, my husband was calling endos around town, trying to get me in somewhere. And there was a doctor who could see me first thing in January, I think. And I was like, you know what? They're going to give me enough insulin to get me through January. Will be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And got out of the hospital on a Saturday. Monday, I got a call from the endo office saying, hey, we had a cancellation for tomorrow. Can you come in? Oh, heck yes, I can.
Yeah. You might. By the way, I'm sorry. Are we going to get to the endo's office and find out that these people are inept too? Or is this something?
No.
Does this get to be a good story?
The endo is great. The endo is fantastic.
Excellent.
And so I go in and, I'm explaining to him the situation. He was like, they didn't do any diagnostic tests. And I said, well, I had to beg and plead for the antibody test, but it hasn't come back yet. And he just kind of sighs and he said, okay, well, we'll order a C-peptide and we'll order an antibody test. And I got the results from the endo before I got the results from the hospital.
Okay. I want to jump ahead a little bit, but I do have to ask you, did you ever go to the doctor that canceled the orders? Have you sent them like a card that says, I have type 1 diabetes, you suck, or something like that? Or no? No,
but I did file a formal complaint against her with the hospital, and I let them know that she misdiagnosed me.
Oh, fun times. Good for her.
Yeah.
Yeah, try harder. So now, how long ago was this? 6 months?
A little less than 6 months, but yeah.
How is it going for you? How are you finding the transition for yourself versus what your experience was with your son?
So it's been it's had both its seamless parts and its less seamless parts. So, once I got the official diagnosis, I was able to go into my endo and say, and actually when I had gone into him the first time, I said, I came in here for two things. I want a diagnosis and a Dexcom. And I left with the Dexcom.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So that was pretty awesome.
Did they give you the whole setup, or did they give you that Hello Dexcom thing?
No, they gave me a transmitter and a sensor.
Yeah, but did the box say Hello Dexcom on it? Do you remember?
Think so.
Yeah, that's a new program they have where doctors have those in their offices.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
But
cool.
It was pretty awesome, I have to say. I was like, Christmas came early.
Yeah. Well, actually late, because didn't this all happen 6 months, like right at Christmas?
Right, it did.
Yeah,
but the endo, I had my very first appointment with the endo, I think 2 or 3 days before Christmas.
Oh, wow. Oh, so that whole story happened very quickly then.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then Christmas did indeed come early.
It did. It was awesome. I was like, hey, I can actually eat on Christmas because I can see what my blood sugar is doing. And now I have an insulin to carb ratio, so I can actually figure out how much insulin I need for stuff.
Yeah. Are you using pens still?
I am not. That was another issue, was that the hospital sent me home with pens, but no needle caps. And when they sent the prescriptions in, they sent a prescription in for pens, which weren't covered by my insurance, and did not send in any needle cap prescriptions. So they were super helpful. I ended up having to use Jack's insulin and leftover syringes from when he was still on MDI.
Right. I'm just laughing because you just imagine at some point in a story, something would go right. and you're down into the nitty gritty now, right? Of like, the syringes they gave you, and you still it's fascinating. It really and I want to bring this up. I've been thinking this for 30 minutes now. You're a younger person who has a child with type 1 diabetes. Imagine you're 55 years old, don't know anything about diabetes. This exact health thing happens to you. You are in your house right now taking metformin thinking you have type 2 diabetes.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Well, or if I had gone to the hospital, because at that point I would have been comatose, you know,
yeah.
I'd have been back in the hospital because they didn't send me home with insulin that I could use or anything to use it with.
Right. No, yeah, you basically are the source of all information in this scenario.
Right.
No one else is helping you. Except the one doctor who apparently they only let work when the sun's not up for some reason.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't want her actually talking to the patient.
Yeah.
She might get ideas.
She might figure out what's wrong with them. Oh my gosh. Wow. So I'm sorry. Are you using a pump now?
I am. So I got on into an Omnipod, I think 2 days before my wedding. So that would have been February 10th.
Wow. And your son uses which pump?
Omnipod.
Oh, well, you just have a big stack of them.
Right. We have interchangeable matching equipment. We use everything the same except for our insulin.
No kidding. Really, what insulin do you use?
So I'm on Novolog and Jack is on Humalog.
Really? Is that insurance?
It's insurance. Funny enough, we both have Blue Cross Blue Shield, but we have two different versions of Blue Cross Blue Shield.
I see. Wow. Is it scary? Giving yourself insulin? Or let me say that in English. Is it scarier giving yourself insulin or giving it to a kid?
To a kid.
Okay. Do you know why?
I guess it's the idea of if a train's coming at you and you can throw your kid out of the way first, that's what you're going to do, right?
Right. So you feel like if there's the possibility you're going to make a mistake, you feel less frightened about making it on yourself than on him.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you use a lot more insulin than he does? Or are you honeymooning?
Oh, yeah. No. Oh, no. I straight went to 30 when I was still on MDI. It was 30 units of Levemir, like from the get-go.
Okay. And
was
that hard for you, like because of the number?
I mean, the first couple of times I was just like, oh, this better go right. And then it went right a couple of times. So I was like, okay, height, weight, age, here we are. And then I think that also allowed Jordan and I to kind of reassess, like, okay, this is where we're going. Like, this is where Jack's going to get to at some point. So we know that there's just going to be incremental increases along the way.
Oh, good. So it gave you some insight, because that's where people struggle a lot. Their kids get bigger and they don't use any more insulin. And they're like, I don't understand, his blood sugars are going up now. Like, well, he weighs 12 more pounds than he did last year, and you're still have him on a 0.35 basal rate, like exactly. That kind of thing. So that it was helpful, eye-opening for you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hear adults all the time tell people, like with kids who have type 1, they're like, wait till you see how much insulin you use when you're older. It's going to freak you out. And, what's the biggest bolus you've made at a meal?
I think I've probably done 25 or 30 units for a meal before.
Do you feel like, are you like superior in that situation? You're like, Jack, look at this.
I have shown him a couple of times because he'll see a 5-unit bolus and like, that's a big meal for him. And I'll be like, hey, come here, look at this. See, mommy's getting 25 units.
Right.
His eyes just, big as saucers.
He's still little too, right? Like, what is he, 10?
He'll be 9 in September, actually.
Yeah. I mean, he's still like a little kid. Was it? I just like stuttered through 18 sounds and didn't make one word. Everyone go back and listen to that again. I was like, I felt stupid while I was doing it. How's his reaction been to you having type 1?
So that's kind of a funny thing in itself. As we were heading out the door to drop me off at the ER, because it was a family adventure. He says to me, honestly, Mom, I'm kind of scared, but I'm kind of excited to not be the only one in the house with diabetes anymore.
I understand that.
And there was part of me that kind of wanted to go, well, Merry frickin' Christmas, kid.
Jack, listen, I got to tell you something. I see where this would bring you comfort, but I'm really hoping it's not that.
Well, and that was kind of the other thing too, is I was kind of hoping it was type 1 because I didn't want to have to learn another disease.
Right. I understand.
I mean, I know that sounds kind of weird because everybody's like, no, shouldn't you hope that it's type 2 because you can make that go away? And I'm like, oh God, I've got to relearn everything if it's that. Like if it's type 1, just slap the stuff on me and let me go.
Yeah. At least you didn't need a coochiectomy.
Right.
Yeah. Or whatever would have happened. Yeah, I'm obviously I'm not an OBGYN by trade. I have what you might call a tangential understanding of the area, but nothing medical. Yeah, no, I get that. Like, well, at least I won't have to learn something new is a reasonable thought, honestly. And has it brought him comfort, do you think?
I think so. We were going through some periods where he was screaming pretty loud with his pod changes. Mm-hmm. And I had him do not do my pod changes, but I had him activate them.
Yeah.
And I would just look at him and I wouldn't make a sound. And I was like, all right, I'm doing this every 3 days. Why are you screaming? And it's kind of allowed us to kind of reframe some of that for him of, this, it's something that we just have to do. And there's times where it sucks. There's times where it definitely sucks. And there have been, I say there are some days where I don't want a diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the days where, I probably eat more cheese and nuts and salami that is really healthy. Because I just don't want to mess with my blood sugar. Okay. I just don't want to mess with it. I know I'm going to have to eventually because of the protein and the way all of that works. But I don't have to mess with it the way that I would like eating a sandwich.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I've seen Arden do that. Like, just be like, I'm just having a salad for dinner because I'm not up for this today. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I can understand that. Do you ever see Jack do it?
He hasn't really hit that point, and I think that's because we haven't really transferred any of the ownership of it over. Mm-hmm. He's still 8, so we will have him bolus himself sometimes, but we don't have him try to count up the carbs or anything. Although he did get really excited when I showed him the food library. Excuse me, in the dash, because he was like, oh, I can show this to Dad, and now when we get McDonald's we can just go in here and I can bring it up on the menu. Like,
you're like, yes. Well, could you not go to McDonald's? Would that be easier? Please help me. Someone help me. Anybody help me. Well, it is a nice feature to have that. Do you find the food library comes pretty close for the carbs?
It comes relatively close. Usually what happens with us is almost without fail when we're doing those higher carb meals is it'll be on a day where we've had more activity. And so Jack and I will end up, snacking on something later. Mm-hmm. So we're still trying to figure that out. We've done a few family hikes and it took a couple of those for us to kind of really realize, okay, we just need to cut the basil like in half for the duration of this. So it is kind of one of those things where I feel like I'm helping him learn more quicker. because he also sees me doing it.
I have to be honest. I'm just thinking, I joked earlier about it because I was just being stupid, but now I definitely want to keep the podcast going for like 6 more years and have you back again, because I can't wait to figure out what you guys figure out together. Like as he heads off to college and
Right.
you know what I mean? And you're like, it's going to be like it's a strangely fascinating journey, especially that you're diagnosed after him. I don't know why I find that to be more like unique.
It's not super common is what I've picked up on. It's happened. There's a few people in a couple of Facebook groups, but it's not super common for what and to have the ages be so spread, right? Because like you don't have a ton of 2-year-olds being diagnosed, and then you don't have a ton of 38-year-olds being diagnosed either.
Yeah, you guys got both.
Right. Yeah. I have actually said to people, I was like, don't try and throw any kind of, numbers or statistics at me, because they just don't apply to this house.
Do you guys have any other autoimmune stuff?
Well, and that's actually why we thought that I might have ended up having LADA that I ignored. Because I also, within the last 6 years, developed asthma and eczema.
Yeah, those are both like autoimmune, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Look at this. Well. What a little train wreck this is. I enjoyed this conversation very much. Does the kid look nervous, the baby? Is she like, hey, you dodgy too with your diabetes?
I mean, she don't
know, but I mean, are you going to
no,
have her
she
tested?
does.
Oh,
no,
she
does. She absolutely 100%. Like,
oh, okay.
To say, so I've been in counseling for 5 years.
Right.
And Jack's been in counseling for 3 or 4, and Evie's been in counseling for a couple of years. And part of that with me is, I have, on top of everything else, I have bipolar and ADD. And so mental health is something that is very important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to set the kids up for success with that as well, because just the odds are one of them is going to end up with this other fun disease as well.
Trying to be ahead of it. That's really a good idea, actually. Hey, you've got to be like, I got to be 5 or 6 people deep into type 1 and bipolar. People just bring it, like it just comes up more and more. Have you heard the bipolar episodes?
I haven't caught up to those yet.
You're going to get to a couple of them.
Yeah. No, I did listen to Donnie's on trauma and addiction, which was super cathartic. Oh. That was a really great one to hear. And then I had kind of said, I need to get to these other ones, but I'm very particular in listening to everything chronologically.
Hey, I don't want to get in the way of your craziness. You do whatever you need to do. That's fine with me.
Hey, we're all a little crazy. It's just, which brand are you?
Whatever works for you. I'm 100% okay with. As long as you're subscribed in a podcast app, downloading new episodes and listening, you can do it in any order you want. But if Donnie will hear this, and he'll be very happy to know that the episode was valuable for you. But yeah, I mean, so what you'll hear me do when they're on is I'm Googling, at points, and there are doctors who see bipolar as autoimmune.
That would.
You're like, why not?
Yeah, I mean, chunk it in there.
One of the more recent discoveries in the study of bipolar disorder is that autoimmune disease may play a role in the condition's development. Studies have found that having an autoimmune disease or suffering a severe infection increases the risk of having bipolar disorder. That's all I know. But all I can tell you is that the number of people who are on the show who mention bipolar are starting to stack up. So it's sort of like, it's not quite up to the speed of like, and I have hypothyroidism.
Right.
Which is just like, I bought this purse and I got this great handbag to put it in. Like, that just seems like at this point, like one goes with the other for most people. It's not quite up to that, but I am noticing people mentioning it. So, anyway, it's interesting. At the very least, I'm not the people who are fighting with it. To them, it's a horror, but it's interesting.
It really is. And I'm actually coming off of, this is my last week of a 6-week leave of absence due to a depressive episode. So,
okay. Is it, can you feel it? Like, I'll let you go after this because we're over time, but do you like notice it happening? Or do you feel like warning signs coming and you can get like, at least make plans to be ahead of it a little bit, or how does that work?
Yeah. So some of them I can, this last one was, pretty detrimental to the point to where I had been able to sustain most of my mental health for about 10 to 13 years without medication. And this last episode, I needed to go back on medication.
How long is it?
And so this last one really kind of hit me, I don't want to say out of nowhere, but it was, there wasn't a foreseeable trigger to it.
Okay. Does the medication impact your blood sugar at all?
Oddly, if it does anything, it makes it easier to control and it drops it.
Oh, okay.
And that might also be, I'm on an antipsychotic, which I'm sure my exes would all say like, yeah, that fits. But I'm on an antipsychotic and a stimulant for ADD. And so it's kind of hard to tell which one is doing which. But my blood sugar has definitely been easier to get lower.
Okay. Can I ask one question and then just preface it by saying you don't have to answer it? Like we can just end up, like I'll ask it, and if you want to answer it, you can. And if you don't want to answer it, I'll skip to saying goodbye to you and I'll cut out the part where I asked it. Okay.
Sure thing.
Did you have some sort of a trauma earlier in your life?
I actually have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So
got it.
Yes. Several.
I see. All right. Because Donnie's episode was a weird one to call up for me. Like you got that you pulled that one out of left field while you were talking. And also, if bipolar can be triggered by an infection, you had bipolar before you had type 1, which is what made me ask.
Yeah.
So, got it. Okay. Wow. Beth, you up for this again in 5 or 6 more years?
Oh, sure. Whatever.
We'll just get you on the calendar right now.
It seems like we might have to as far out as your books.
Do you know? Well, first of all, this won't go up for like 6 months, and that has nothing to do with you. But do you know that yesterday, June 8th, 2021, someone booked a recording for June 6th, 2022.
Oh my gosh.
And I felt kind of like proud when it happened.
Oh yeah,
I was
absolutely.
like, this thing is so busy. People are like, I can do it in a year. I'd love to. No trouble at all. Knowing full well that they're going to wait a year to say something that won't be heard for 18 months from the day they booked it. I was really touched by, like, proud in a humbled way. Like, I was really touched by the idea that it would mean enough for someone to be on the podcast for them to go through those kind of machinations to do that. It was really cool. Yeah. So, I'm glad you reached back out again. I'm super sorry you got diabetes. But great story.
Well, thanks. Yeah, no, I did say to my husband, if there was going to be one of us in the house to get it, to make Jack feel more included, I'm glad it was me.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Well, you're going to provide a real great comfort for him that you might never fully appreciate, but he's like his mom, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
It's pretty great, actually, in a really strange way. Not a lot of people talk about diabetes the way I do.
Hey, I always said to Jack, everybody's got something. we found his out early, and we found out a few of mine a little bit later.
One day I'll get it, and you'll just hear me like go kicking and screaming. Like when it happens to you, I'm like, it's great that your son's got it'll happen to me one day, and I'll just be on here for 3 hours just mumbling into the microphone like, yeah, motherfuckers. Like, it got me. Like, I won't handle it nearly as well as I talk about it. That's for certain.
Right. Well, and I think if it had happened in any year besides 2020, I would have had that same reaction. But given the entirety of 2020, like once it hit in December, I was just like, oh, this figures. Yeah, this is how 2020 ends for me.
Why not? I thought a meteor was going to hit the house, but this is just as good.
Right.
Yeah. Jeez. Wow. Well, you've got the most interesting story at Christmas dinner next year. That's for certain. I mean,
no joke.
Virtual Christmas dinner. No.
God, I hope not this Christmas.
Do you know? Let me, I do have to go in a second. Actually, I'm recording twice today, so I have to go collect myself before I do this again. But super boring story. I had to replace the pressure valve on our hot water heater yesterday. Those of you who think I'm famous now realize I'm not. But I'm at the Home Depot, and I believe I was the only person wearing a mask in Home Depot. Oh. And that took me by surprise. I'm vaccinated, but I was like, I don't know. It's in the car. Like I put it on, you know what I mean? Like just seemed
right.
Like I'm super happy to have not had a cold for the last 18 months, really. So like,
Oh yeah. Yeah. No. I mean, there are things about the Northeast that I'm very, very much jealous of right now, because I'm originally from Wisconsin, when Wisconsin was a very blue state. And I currently live in Dallas, Texas.
Do you think it's politically motivated by people's mask wearing?
I think some of it is. Huh. Yeah. And I think here specifically it has been.
Okay. I have to admit, I pick it up and I'm like, I don't know if this is really necessary or not at this point, but what the hell? Like, I don't feel like forced to do it. I'm just like, why? I mean, it hasn't bothered me. I've been doing it for a while. It really doesn't bother me. And so, but I'm vaccinated, and I was like, yeah, like, I mean, I don't know. Like it just didn't occur to me. I'm sure one day it won't. Having said that, I was with my son somewhere a couple of weeks ago in a place where it's like a private place. There weren't a ton of people in it, and you had to prove if you were vaccinated or not. And if you were, you didn't have to wear a mask, and if you weren't, you did. And I went in there without a mask, and I never thought twice about it. I know it's all kind of arbitrary. I don't really know how I feel about any of it, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's, I think I'll feel better about it once I'm able to get the kids vaccinated, because that's always been the leading factor for me is their health.
That should be soon, right? Though by age, you can, they're eligible now, right?
I think, well, Jack will be eligible before Evie because he'll be 9 in September, but Evie's still 6.
Really? It's Texas. Yeah. I thought you're allowed to do whatever you wanted.
Well,
that's the one thing you're not allowed to do.
That's the one thing you're not allowed to do, apparently.
Well, I think if you could put the vaccine on a bullet, you would be allowed to shoot somebody with it.
See, there you go. That's thinking outside the box.
I don't know if that would work, how the vaccines work exactly. Again, not a doctor. So I'm not certain.
Nothing you hear on the Juicebox podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise.
It's barely common sense. It's definitely not medical advice. Well, I really appreciate you doing this and taking the time. I want to thank you. No, thank you very much. It's been a joy getting back together with you again. I can't believe you were on like 7 years ago. It's insane. It's insane that I kept this going, but it's even more insane that you're like aware of it still, and that's crazy.
Absolutely.
It's hard for me to
help.
Oh, I'm so happy. It's just hard for me to fathom. Like, you have to put yourself in my shoes. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, I'll do a thing. And 7 years later, it's like, it comes out 3 times a week, and it's listened to like constantly by like all over the world. And I didn't think all that was going to happen. I definitely didn't think, like, back then I probably was like, I can't believe I tricked these people into coming on my podcast and nobody listens to. And but for you coming on, you helped build it. Like, there's a great story. There are great stories in the beginning that helped build the podcast. So it should be interesting for you to know, and then I will let you go. that in the first 24 hours that your episode is out, it will be heard more than probably your first episode's entirety.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, that's kind of wild.
The podcast gets more downloads a day now than it would have taken 4 months in the first year to get as many downloads as I get in a day now.
Wow.
And that's bizarre. Like, I'm flabbergasted by it still. Like, I will never be accustomed to it. And still,
it's a testament to the good work you're doing.
Well, I just want more. That's nice of you to say, but I want it to reach more people. I want to win. I don't even know what I'm trying to win, Beth, but whatever it is, I want to win it.
You're trying to win diabetes.
It's probably an illness. The competitive nature is likely. I've probably bumped my head when I was a little kid, but in honesty, I really, if the podcast is helpful to people, then it feels incumbent to try to reach more people. So yeah. That's how it feels to me, for real, when I'm not joking about it. I'd like to thank touchedbytype1.org for being a longtime sponsor of the Juicebox Podcast, and remind you to check them out on Facebook and Instagram and go see what they're doing at touchedbytype1.org. I also want to thank Beth for being a returning guest after 7 years and sharing her story as it grows. Maybe I'm going to have on some more return guests. This was really interesting. I like catching up with Beth. If you're enjoying the Juicebox Podcast, please leave a fantastic rating and review wherever you listen. And don't forget to subscribe and follow in the podcast app that you're listening in right now. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.